My parents always treated my sister like royalty and me like a nuisance. She stole my boyfriend in high school and my family blamed me for the fallout. Years later, she dumped her kids on my doorstep and ran off with a sugar daddy. But when I tried to protect them, my family declared war. What I did next changed everything. Frankie, I don't usually talk to strangers about this stuff. Hell, I barely talk to friends about it. But something about being in the back of a cab, watching the city blur by in silence, makes the memories bubble up. So, here goes. I was born second. That sounds like nothing, right? But in my family, it meant everything. Because my sister Celeste was born first, and she was perfect. At least that's how everyone told it. She had this hair that curled naturally like it belonged in a shampoo commercial. Big hazel eyes and this effortless charm that made adults melt. When she walked into a room, people smiled. When I did, they asked me to shut the door behind me. Even as kids, the favoritism was obvious. On my 5th birthday, I got a Barbie from the dollar store and a homemade cake. Celeste, for her 5th, they rented a pony. A goddamn pony. When I cried about it that night, my mom said, "Sweetheart, you're just not as excitable as your sister. We thought you wouldn't care." I cared. God, I cared so much it hollowed me out. Everything was a comparison. Celeste was bubbly, I was moody. She was creative, I was too serious. If she got a B, it was framed on the fridge like modern art. If I got an A+, they'd say, "Why are you showing off?" No one likes a know-it-all. By the time I was 12, I stopped trying to impress them. I stopped talking at dinner, stopped asking them to come to my school plays or science fairs. They never came anyway. But I didn't give up. I poured every ounce of that rejection into something I could control: school. I studied obsessively. I won spelling bees. I joined the mathletes, the debate team, science club, anything to prove I mattered. And I was good, damn good. I became the girl the teachers praised, the one with color-coded notes and a backpack full of highlighters. My bedroom walls were plastered with certificates and ribbons, achievements that collected dust because my parents never asked about them. Meanwhile, Celeste partied. She snuck out, smoked in the backyard, and blamed it on our neighbors. My parents just laughed it off. Teenagers, they'd say, "Let her have her fun." One time she came home drunk from a party and vomited all over the living room. I cleaned it up while my mom rubbed her back and whispered, "Oh, sweetie, are you okay?" That same week, I got detention for calling out a boy who cheated off my test. My dad grounded me for being dramatic. The worst part? I still loved her. Despite everything, I wanted my sister to like me. I wanted her to see me. I followed her around like a lost puppy, hoping she'd let me into her world. And for a while, it seemed like she did. When I was 16 and she was 17, she suddenly started inviting me places. To the mall, to the movies. I was so stunned I thought it was a prank. But she was sweet, so sweet. Called me little sis. Did my makeup, said we should bond more. That's when I introduced her to Aiden. Aiden was my first boyfriend. He was shy, funny, and kind. We met in chem class and it felt like something real. He said I made him feel safe, that he liked how I listened, that I had a beautiful brain. He was the first person who saw me, Frankie, not just as Celeste's sister, not as some overachieving nerd. Me. Celeste met him at our house one evening. We were doing homework on the porch. She came out in one of those low-cut tops she always wore, batted her lashes, and asked, "Who's the cutie?" I laughed it off. Aiden smiled politely. I told myself she was just teasing. 2 weeks later, he dumped me over text. I was crushed. I spent 2 days curled in bed, trying not to cry loud enough for my parents to notice. They didn't. No one asked why I skipped dinner. No one cared. And then Celeste left her phone on the bathroom sink one night. It lit up. A message from Aiden. "Can't wait to see you again tonight. Last night was amazing." My fingers went cold. My stomach dropped. I scrolled. There were dozens of messages. Pictures. Pictures, Frankie. She'd been sleeping with him for weeks. I confronted her that night. Screamed. Sobbed. Threw the phone at her feet. She didn't deny it. Just shrugged. "You should thank me," she said. "He clearly wasn't that into you. I just sped things along." I was shaking, my whole body. I turned to my parents, expecting something. Anger. Disappointment. Anything. My dad sighed. "Well, you can't control who people fall for." My mom said, "Don't be so dramatic. Celeste didn't mean to hurt you." I ran out of the house barefoot. I slept in the park that night. It was cold, I didn't care. After that, I stopped being part of the family. At meals, no one spoke to me. If I entered a room, they turned the TV up. They stopped saying goodnight, stopped pretending to care. So I disappeared, not physically, but emotionally, spiritually. I lived like a ghost in my own home. But I kept studying, harder than ever. I made it my mission to leave that house and never look back. Senior year, I applied to 13 colleges, got accepted to 11, full ride to a top-tier university. When the letter came, I ran home, practically bursting. I held it out to my parents. "Look," I said, "I got the scholarship. It's everything. I can go. I don't need anything from you." My mom glanced up from her tablet. "That's nice, dear. Don't forget to take out the trash." My dad didn't look up at all. Celeste came down the stairs in a new designer dress. "I need money for gas," she said. My dad pulled out his wallet and handed her a 50. That night, I sat on my bedroom floor with my acceptance letter in one hand and a candle in the other. I watched the wax drip, thought about burning the letter just to feel something, but I didn't, because deep down, I still believed I could make a life worth something, even if no one clapped when I got there. The day I moved out for college, no one said goodbye. Celeste was in the pool. My parents were watching reruns of some sitcom. I loaded my bags into a rideshare and drove away. I didn't cry. I just watched my house shrink in the rearview mirror and told myself, this is the last time they get to ignore you. But even now, years later, that house lives in me. The feeling of being invisible. That's why I don't trust easily. Why do I flinch when people praise me? Why do I still wake up sometimes, wondering what I did to be so unloved? You ever feel that, Frankie? Like maybe you were born into the wrong story? Yeah, me too. Anyway, sorry for the overshare. Long cab ride, quiet night, just felt like talking. But it's not over. You ever work so hard to outrun your past, only to realize it still has you by the ankles? I left home like a bullet shot from a loaded chamber. College was freedom, and I treated it like a lifeline. I graduated top of my class, got a job at a major firm right out of school, and moved into a downtown apartment with high ceilings and a view of the skyline. It wasn't much at first, but it was mine, no one else's. By 25, I was managing million-dollar projects. By 27, I bought a condo in my name, alone. I didn't need to check with anyone, didn't need anyone to sign off on anything. Just me, my signature, and keys that only fit my door. You'd think success like that would earn at least a nod from my family. It didn't. When I told my parents about the promotion, my mom said, "That's nice. Do you still have time to date? You're not getting any younger." Celeste, who was already twice divorced by then and had a toddler she routinely dumped on neighbors, chimed in with, she probably just married her job. That was Thanksgiving. I flew in, thinking maybe if I showed them who I'd become, they'd finally see me. I wore a sleek navy suit, brought a bottle of wine from a boutique label, and offered to help cook. My mom waved me away. "You don't know how we do things. Just sit." Celeste showed up an hour late in a crop top and leggings, dragging along her son, Mason. He was 3 and sticky-fingered, always clutching some half-eaten cracker. He ran through the house, knocking over candles and screaming about YouTube. "Isn't he precious?" My mom beamed, like Mason farting on the couch was Mozart at a piano. When I tried to talk about my work, Celeste yawned. "You always go on about your job. Not everyone cares about tax law, you know." My dad laughed like she'd told the best joke in the world. They never asked where I lived, never saw the condo, never even remembered the name of my firm. But Celeste's boyfriend of the week? They knew everything about him. His favorite football team, his failed landscaping business, even his favorite type of gum. And yet I kept coming back, every major holiday, every birthday, like some desperate fool hoping for a different ending. Meanwhile, my life in the real world was blooming. I traveled to conferences in Europe, presented at panels, even did a guest lecture at a law school in London. That's where I met Oliver. He was British, soft-spoken with this dry sense of humor that cracked me up. We met at a networking event, both reaching for the same tiny cocktail sandwich. We ended up talking for 2 hours in a quiet corner about books and favorite cities and what it means to actually feel safe with someone. It was slow, intentional, the opposite of everything I'd ever known. We started dating long distance. Red-eye flights, stolen weekends in quiet cafes, endless phone calls that stretched past midnight. He made me feel calm, seen, respected. When I finally introduced him to my family over video chat, my mom squinted at the screen and said, "He looks tired. Do you like tired-looking men now?" Celeste didn't say a word, just stared at him, then at me and smirked. I muted the call before I lost it. Back on her end, things were a mess. Celeste had moved in with a guy named Trent, who had a record and a temper. They fought loud and often. Mason was always either being yelled at or completely ignored. I offered to help, babysit, buy groceries, whatever. Celeste said, You think money solves everything, don't you? You just want to play hero. But I didn't want to play hero. I just didn't want Mason to grow up feeling like I did. The tension boiled over one Christmas. I had flown home again, suitcase filled with gifts, thoughtful ones, not just toys, but sensory puzzles and books for Mason, a silk scarf for my mom, a rare vinyl for my dad. I even bought Celeste a spa gift card. They handed me a gas station gift bag with expired lotion and said, "We didn't know you'd be coming." I just nodded, said thank you, smiled through gritted teeth. That night, Mason had a fever. Celeste was drunk, passed out on the couch. My mom was busy on Facebook, so I stayed up with him, held him as he cried, wiped his nose, fed him spoonfuls of cold applesauce. At one point, he clutched my hand and whispered, "You smell like nice." I cried in the bathroom with the water running. Later, when I told Celeste what happened, she rolled her eyes. "Kids get sick, he'll live. You don't have to be dramatic." It hit me then. Nothing I ever did would be enough. Not the degrees, not the promotions, not the love I tried to give them. But still, I kept showing up. Because somewhere deep inside, I still believed I could rewrite the story. That if I just proved my worth loud enough, long enough, they'd finally say, "We're proud of you." Instead, all I got was silence. Or worse, laughter. And yet, every time Oliver held me, every time Mason called me Auntie Nice, I felt a little more whole. Like maybe I didn't need their applause anymore. Maybe I was already enough. "You still with me, Frankie?" Didn't mean to go off like that, but sometimes, once the dam breaks, there's no stopping the flood. You ever meet someone who had to raise themselves just to survive? Yeah, that was me. But the real storm? It hadn't even hit yet. That came next. And when it did, it changed everything. It started with a knock. Sunday morning. I was in pajamas, halfway through a mug of coffee, watching Oliver on FaceTime read me some ridiculous news headline in his British accent. And then, knock, knock, knock. 3 quick raps, urgent and sharp. When I opened the door, my heart sank. Celeste stood there, mascara smudged, red lipstick faded around the corners of her mouth. Her suitcase was bulging. Mason stood beside her, wide-eyed, and next to him, another boy, a toddler I didn't even recognize. "This is Lucas," she said. "He's mine too. Surprise." Before I could speak, she shoved the kids forward. "I need you to take them, just for a little while." "What?" "Celeste, what are you talking about?" "I'm going to Dubai." My mouth dropped open. "You what?" She rolled her eyes. "Look, I got an opportunity. A good one. His name's Paolo. He's loaded, and he wants to take me traveling. I can't say no." "You're abandoning your kids." "I'm asking you to babysit. Don't be dramatic." I was frozen. Lucas looked terrified. Mason clung to my leg. "I can't just... Celeste, I work full-time. I have a life. You can't dump them here." And then she leaned in, smiling. "If you don't, I'll make a few calls. You know, mention that breakdown you had in college. The anxiety meds, the leave of absence." My stomach dropped. "Try explaining that to your firm. They're strict about mental stability, right?" I stared at her, my mouth dry. She was bluffing. She had to be. But the threat was clear. She stood straight. "They'll be better off here. You love playing mommy, don't you?" And just like that, she was gone. I stood there for a full minute before Mason tugged my sleeve. "Can we have cereal?" I closed the door behind them and slid to the floor. The first few days were chaos. Lucas cried constantly. Mason had nightmares. I scrambled to find a daycare that would take them last minute. I called in every favor I had. Oliver offered to fly in, but I told him no. I needed to handle it. And slowly, God, slowly, a rhythm formed. Lucas started calling me Mimi. Mason stopped flinching at sudden noises. We built blanket forts. We danced in the kitchen. They asked for bedtime stories and hugs and pancakes with whipped cream. They laughed. They trusted me. And I started to hope. I documented everything. Every missed call from Celeste. Every text where she bragged about yachts and champagne. Every moment they cried for her and she never answered. I contacted CPS anonymously first, asked questions, then formally reported her. They launched an investigation. That's when the threats started. Voicemails, dozens. Screaming, crying, accusations. "You cold-hearted itch. They're my kids. You think you're better than me?" Then my mom called. "How dare you report your sister? Do you want to tear this family apart?" I said, "She abandoned her children." Mom said, "You always wanted to steal the spotlight. Now you're trying to steal her kids too?" That night, someone egged my front door. My tires were slashed the next morning. The police logged the report, warned me to install cameras. I did. One evening, I came home from work and found my front window shattered. Inside, Celeste and my mother stood in my living room. "What the hell? How did you even get in here?" Celeste lunged. "You think you can take everything from me?" She slapped me hard across the face. I tasted blood. My mom screamed at me for making a scene. That was it. I hit the panic button on my key fob. The siren blared. My neighbor ran over. The cops showed up in under 5 minutes. Celeste was hysterical, screaming, kicking. They had to restrain her. The boys watched everything. Lucas sobbing. Mason curled up in the corner. I begged the officers to keep them calm. Mason clutched my arm and whispered, "Don't let them take us. Please." CPS arrived within the hour. I handed over all my documentation. The videos, the texts, the photos of bruises I found on Mason once. Even a drawing he made of Auntie Mimi's house, with hearts all around it. And they took them. Mason looked at me, betrayed. "You said we could stay forever." I broke down after they left, threw up twice, called Oliver and just cried into the phone. "They think I lied. They think I let them down." He just whispered, "You protected them. You did what you had to." I wasn't so sure, but deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. The fight had only begun, because I wasn't just fighting for them anymore. I was fighting for that little girl I used to be, who had no one to fight for her. It took 6 months for my life to stabilize again, at least on the surface. On the inside, I was constantly on edge. Every ring of my phone made my stomach lurch. Every knock at the door made my heart pound. I didn't hear from Celeste or my mother for weeks after the police removed them from my home. But silence, I learned, was never safety. It was just the eye of the storm. It started with an email, anonymous but clearly from Celeste. Accusations that I was mentally unstable, abusive, and unfit to care for children. A long rant about how I'd kidnapped her sons and manipulated the system. She sent it to my firm's HR department. I was called into a meeting, 2 senior partners, HR. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold my water bottle. But I came prepared. I handed them the folder. Every report, every CPS update, a notarized statement from a neighbor who witnessed the assault, photos of my injuries, copies of the threatening texts. By the time I finished presenting my case, the room was silent. They cleared me of all suspicion. And then, God bless them, they offered paid time off to handle the ongoing legal situation. Celeste wasn't done. She tried filing for full custody again, arguing I was a danger, but this time I had everything lined up. My lawyer was sharp, fierce, and thorough. The judge saw right through her crocodile tears. When we walked into court for the criminal case, for the break-in and assault, Celeste showed up in leopard print leggings and a rage she couldn't contain. She screamed in the hallway, pounded on the defense table, had to be removed mid-hearing. My mother sat stone-faced, refusing to look at me. The judge sentenced Celeste to 18 months in county jail. She also lost all parental rights due to endangerment and prior abandonment. My mother was fined and placed under a restraining order. I walked out of that courthouse with trembling legs and tear-streaked cheeks. But for the first time in my life, I felt free. But the real battle still loomed, the custody fight. The boy's father, Lucas's dad, came out of the woodwork, claimed he wanted custody. So did Mason's paternal grandmother, but neither had so much as sent a birthday card in years. The hearings stretched on for almost 2 years. Court-appointed evaluators visited my home. I had to submit letters from my therapist, my employer, even my neighbors. I attended every mediation, every check-in, every supervised visitation. Oliver stood by me, flew in for every major date, held me when I cried at night, read bedtime stories to the boys over video calls when they finally came back into my care, first for weekends, then for good. It wasn't official until the morning I received the letter. The court hereby grants full legal and physical custody to my name, recognizing her as the primary and permanent guardian of minors, Mason, last name, and Lucas, last name. I stared at it for a full minute before the meaning hit me. They were mine. Not because I wanted to own them, but because I would never let them be abandoned again. When I picked them up from school that day, they ran into my arms. Mason whispered, "Do we get to stay this time?" I nodded, voice breaking. "Forever." That night we had a dance party in the living room, just the 3 of us, blasting old pop music, eating pizza, laughing until our sides hurt. Later, when they were asleep, Oliver called. "You did it," he said. "No," I said, wiping tears. "We did." My home isn't perfect. It's loud, messy, sometimes chaotic, but it's filled with love, with safety, with second chances. And every time I look at those boys, at the drawings they tape to the fridge, the way they call for me when they're scared or proud, I know this. The cycle ends with me. They'll never have to wonder if they're enough. They'll never have to earn love like it's a paycheck. They're home, and maybe so am I. If you made it this far, thanks for riding with me. If you love real, messy, emotional stories like this, go ahead and hit subscribe. There's always another confession waiting in the backseat.